I have a bit of a provocation for you to start things off today.
Okay, let's hear it.
We generally treat genius or, innovation like it's the weather.
Like the weather?
Yeah, like it's a lightning bolt. It just strikes from a clear blue sky, usually when you're in the shower, and you have this magical aha moment that you just can't control.
Right, that's the romantic view, sure.
Yeah.
We like to think it's magic because, honestly, that takes the pressure off.
Exactly, but what if that's completely wrong? What if innovation isn't weather? What if it's manufacturing? Something you can actually engineer step by step to produce a very specific result whenever you want.
That is the central tension of the stack we're looking at for this deep dive.
And I have to say, this is probably the strangest pairing of sources we've ever had on the desk.
It really is. I mean, on my left, I have this incredibly dense technical manual called Architecting H Creativity. It's based on systems theory, artificial intelligence, and the cognitive science of Margaret Bowden.
It's heavy stuff. Yeah, and it claims you can essentially code your brain or an AI to have historically significant ideas.
And then on the right, we have the abstract book from the 2020 International Cancer Education Conference. We are talking hundreds of pages of real-world, gritty problems. Rural health disparities, patient education failures, the logistical nightmare of actually trying to save lives.
So, here's our mission for today. We aren't just summarizing cancer studies. We are going to take the theory from the creativity manual and use it to grade the reality of the cancer abstracts. We want to see if we can reverse engineer the genius in these medical breakthroughs.
And the creativity manual gives us a very specific scorecard to do that. It starts by making a distinction that I think most people miss. The difference between being creative and being historically creative.
Right, this is the P creativity versus H creativity debate.
Exactly. So P creativity stands for personal. It's an idea that is new to you. The classic example is a child realizing that mixing yellow and blue paint makes green.
Huge moment for the kid. Not exactly breaking news to the rest of the world, though.
Precisely. But H creativity is historical. It's an idea that is new to humanity. It fundamentally changes the conceptual space of a field. I mean, it's Newton inventing calculus. It's not just finding a new answer, it's changing the questions entirely.
And the manual argues that there are really only 3 roads to get there. It's not random. You either combine, you explore, or you transform.
That's the framework. Combinational, exploratory, transformational. If you want to solve a problem as hard as cancer education, you have to be walking down one of those 3 roads.
So let's pressure test this. I went through the cancer abstracts looking specifically for the first road, which is combinational creativity. The manual calls this bisociation.
Right. Bisociation is just a fancy way of saying you take 2 orthogonal domains.
2 fields that never talk to each other.
Exactly. And you smash them together to see if they solve each other's problems.
I found a perfect specimen of this in Abstract 1A4 from the Princess Margaret Cancer Center. They were dealing with a heavy qualitative study on metastatic breast cancer. The data was emotional, raw, and very difficult to teach to young doctors using a standard spreadsheet or a lecture.
Because you have the domain of clinical oncology, which is facts, data, survival rates. It's cold.
And they smashed it into the domain of comics. They called it graphic. They didn't just write a report. They took the patient transcripts and turned them into digital comics, complete with voiceovers and music. They used visual storytelling to train healthcare professionals on empathy.
That is textbook combinational creativity. You have art, which excels at emotion and narrative, and medicine, which excels at diagnostics. Separately, neither solves the empathy training problem. Combined, you get a tool that actually works.
It reminds me of that idea about just connecting things. But here's the thing, it's not just about art. I found another one that I think is even more practical and honestly a bit more surprising. Abstract 2C2 from the University of Arizona.
Oh, this is the skin cancer study.
Yes. So, usually skin cancer screening is the domain of a dermatologist. But dermatologists are expensive, hard to book, and you usually only go when you already think something is wrong.
It's a scarce resource.
Right. So the researchers combined dermatology with massage therapy.
Which is brilliant systems thinking. If you stop looking at the labels and look at the actual parameters, you ask, who sees more of a client's skin than a doctor? Who sees it for an hour at a time, repeatedly?
The massage therapist.
Yeah, exactly.
The researchers realized this was a massive untapped surveillance network. They created an online training program to teach therapists how to spot suspicious lesions.
And the results show the therapists became significantly more confident in flagging issues. It's a perfect bisociation.
Yep.
Take a service industry and a medical necessity, link them up, and you create a new front line for early detection without inventing any new technology.
That is the key for me. No new tech, just a new link. It's almost like the solution was hiding in plain sight, just waiting for someone to draw the line between the dots.
That's usually how combinational creativity works. But the second word is different. Exploratory creativity. This isn't about smashing things together.
This is the map-making road.
Yes. Exploratory creativity is about taking an existing conceptual space, like a geography, a data set, a set of rules, and exploring it so rigorously that you find the negative space. You look for the holes.
The manual calls this a parametric sweep. You aren't inventing, you are auditing.
Exactly. You're testing every variable until you find the edge cases where the system breaks.
Abstract 1B5 is a stark example of this. It's a study out of West Virginia. The researchers used geolocation analysis to map gynecological cancer services. But they didn't just map where the clinics were, they overlaid that with where the cancer incidence rates were highest.
They were looking for the disconnect.
And they found these deserts. Specific counties where the cancer rates were off the charts, but the screening services were absolute zero. By rigorously mapping the space, they identified exactly where the system was failing.
That's the value of the exploratory approach. It moves you from a vague, hey, we need better care, to we need a clinic in this specific zip code. You find the failure point by exhausting the map.
There was another failure point discovery in Abstract 2B2, the whiteboard animations. This one cracked me up because it's the Dr. YouTube problem.
Oh, right. Everyone goes to YouTube for medical advice now.
Yeah, so these researchers did a systematic review of patient education videos on YouTube. They wanted to see if the most popular content was actually effective.
And they found a massive gap. The videos were popular, sure. Yeah. But when they measured them against health literacy standards, they failed. They were too complex, too jargon heavy.
So the exploration revealed that having information isn't the same as having understanding. The negative space was accessible content.
Exactly. But there is a human side to exploration, too. Look at Abstract 1B1, the study with youth in Appalachian, Kentucky.
That was fascinating. They used storytelling to map how these kids perceive cancer.
This is crucial. They were mapping the conceptual space of the audience. And they found that for these kids, cancer wasn't a biological concept. It was a social one. They defined cancer by tobacco use, lack of education, poverty.
Which means if you walk in there talking about DNA and cell mutation, you're speaking a completely foreign language. You're not even on their map.
Correct. Exploratory creativity prevents you from solving the wrong problem. You have to map the territory before you can build the road.
Okay, so we've combined, we've explored. Now we get to the third road, the one the manual called the Holy Grail. Transformational creativity.
This is the hardest one. This is where you don't just explore the map, you redraw it. You identify a fundamental rule or constraint that everyone assumes is true, and you break it.
The manual uses the example of Schoenberg dropping tonality in music, just refusing to use the key signature. Suddenly, sounds that were illegal become the new standard.
Right. In medicine, there are some very rigid rules, constraints that we don't even question. Like expertise is centralized. If you have a complex disease, you must travel to the big academic hospital in the city.
That's the rule. Expertise is scarce and immobile. But Abstract 2C4, Project Echo, decided that rule was obsolete.
They inverted it. Instead of moving the patient to the expertise, they moved the expertise to the provider.
It's a telementoring model. They didn't just treat patients remotely, they trained local doctors in rural Mississippi to handle complex HPV vaccinations and cancer cases. They turned the generalist into a specialist.
They transformed the structure of the network. It went from a hub and spoke where everything centers on the expert to a distributed mesh. That is age creativity. It changes the history of how care is delivered because it proves you don't need the center to have the excellence.
Another rule is the silo. Abstract 3B3 deals with serious mental illness, or SMI. The rule is psychiatrists handle the mind, oncologists handle the cancer.
And because of that rule, patients with severe mental illness often die of preventable cancers. They fall through the cracks because the systems don't talk to each other. And frankly, a cancer center isn't always designed to handle a patient having a psychiatric crisis.
So the study broke the silo. They integrated cancer screening into the mental health visit. They trained the mental health team to do the cancer prevention work.
They changed the definition of a mental health visit. That's the transformation. You stop seeing the patient as a collection of separate organs and start treating the whole person in one place.
I want to highlight one more because it touches on power dynamics. Abstract 1C4, the Arboles Familiaris project.
The genetic risk assessment.
Yes. The rule is only a genetic counselor or a doctor can assess your cancer risk. That is a very strict boundary in medicine.
Which creates a bottleneck, especially in underserved Latinx communities where trust in doctors might be low or language barriers exist.
So they trained promoters, community health workers to do it. They shifted the boundary of who is allowed to practice medicine.
That's a classic constraint removal. You ask, why is this the rule? If the answer is just tradition or protectionism, you break it. You democratize the tool.
Okay, so we've seen the humans do it. We've seen them smash comics and cancer, map the deserts, and break the rules of who can be a doctor. But I want to pivot back to our technical source, architecting age creativity, because it argues that we can accelerate this process.
Yes, this is where it gets really interesting for you listening. The source explicitly claims that AI isn't just for automating email, it's for automating this divergent thinking process.
It outlines a production divergent thinking stack. It sounds like a mouthful, but let's break it down into actual tools.
It's basically a workflow for forcing your brain, with the help of AI, to travel these three roads we just discussed.
Let's start with the first technique, the brain dump.
This addresses the internal censor. Humans are terrible at brainstorming because we edit our ideas before we even speak them. We're afraid of sounding stupid. We filter for quality immediately.
Which calls quantity. And you need quantity to find the weird stuff.
Exactly. AI doesn't have social anxiety. The brain dump technique involves using an AI agent, like Crew AI, to generate hundreds of fragmented ideas in minutes. The goal is zero inhibition.
So let's apply this. If I'm a cancer researcher, instead of brainstorming with my team where we're all being polite and academic, I tell the AI, give me 100 ways to get rural men to screen for colorectal cancer. Zero filters. Go.
And you'll get 90 bad ideas. Put flyers in tackle boxes. Sponsor a deer hunting competition. Free beer with every colonoscopy.
Screening trucks at the hardware store.
But wait, screening trucks at the hardware store. That's actually a combinational idea. Hardware stores are where the demographic is.
Right. And put flyers in tackle boxes is a form of exploratory creativity, finding the location where the patient actually spends their time.
Exactly. Inside that noise, you find the seeds that a human committee would have been too polite to suggest. The AI generates the raw material, you act as the filter.
Then there's the genius panel. This is my favorite part of the manual because it feels like a role-playing game.
This is about simulating diversity. We know diverse teams produce better ideas, but we don't always have a diverse team handy. So, you create AI agents with specific personas. You create a Picasso agent who looks at problems through cubism, breaking perspectives, or an Escher agent who looks for loops.
So if I'm trying to redesign that scary, sterile patient waiting room, I ask the Picasso agent to critique the blueprints.
And maybe it says, why is the room linear? Why are all chairs facing the clocks? Why is the perspective singular? It forces a transformational perspective by adopting a mindset that naturally breaks the rules of your current space.
It's artificial by association. You're forcing a collision between interior design and cubism to see what happens.
Precisely. And the third technique is the disinhibition protocol.
This sounds dangerous.
It's the taboo question engine. You use AI to ask the questions that would get you fired if you raised your hand in a board meeting.
Give me an example in the cancer context.
You might ask the AI to generate 10 questions about cancer education that challenge the fundamental assumptions of the field.
And it might say, what if patient education pamphlets are actually a waste of money?
Or what if doctors are the wrong people to talk about prevention?
Which is exactly what the promoter study proved.
Exactly. That question is taboo. It insults the doctors. But it led to a breakthrough. The AI allows you to simulate the heretical thought safely. It helps you identify the constraints so you can decide if they are worth breaking.
So we've gone from abstract medical studies to a system for engineering genius. What's the takeaway here? If you're listening to this and you're not curing cancer, but you're trying to fix a supply chain or write a book or run a small business,
the takeaway is that H creativity is a probability game. It's not magic. You don't wait for the lightning bolt.
the manual suggests dual mode work as a daily habit to increase those odds.
Right. You need to split your time. Most of us live in exploit mode, doing what we know, following the rules, grinding out the tasks. You have to carve out time for explore mode.
And explore doesn't mean just reading.
No, explore means running the brain dump. It means listing your taboo questions. It means actively looking for two things on your desk that don't belong together and asking, what happens if I combine these?
It's about building intellectual courage.
I love that phrase. Because looking at these cancer researchers, the common thread wasn't just intelligence. There are plenty of smart people who change nothing. The common thread was the courage to look at a system and say, this isn't working, let's try something weird.
The source ends with a challenge. You cannot guarantee age creativity, but you can radically increase the probability by structuring your life around it.
If you systematically combine, explore, and transform, you are loading the dice in your favor. Eventually, you're going to roll a winner.
So that's your mission. Find two things that don't belong together and smash them. Find a rule in your field and break it. But before you go do that, I want to leave you with one final thought. Think about your own daily routine right now. Not your job, your actual life. What is the one rigid rule you follow every single day without questioning why? And what would happen to your reality if you just dropped it tomorrow?
That's a great question to end on.
Go engineer some genius, everyone. See you next time.